we kind of owe you a massive thank you for actually introducing us, because I met Michael at the Fertility Fest at Shepherd's Bush, the last one that you did there. And I met Sarah at the Fertility Fest in person, the one afterwards at the Barbican.
Yeah.
Leslie and I were outside and we were had several kind of impromptu book signings that we had to organise, Leslie Pine and I. That was a hilarious day. It was so much fun. Absolutely exhausted. I think, Sarah, you and I went for something to eat afterwards, didn't we? With Steph, World Childless Week. And I think I was in the point where I was going to stick my head in the food and kind of go to sleep. God knows what you must have felt like, Jessica, because you had another day to go.
That means a lot to me. That's really nice to hear. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Full Stop Podcast, a childless community podcast with Michael Hughes, Berenice Smith and me, Sarah Lawrence. If you're new to the podcast, we're here to delve beneath the surface of the childless identity, to cover what's going on in the wider community and to look at the topics that really affect us. Our goal is to help and support those of you out in the community by sharing the stories and the voices that make up our narrative, so that you too can begin to find yours. We also aim to inform and educate those who aren't members of our community, so that they too can begin to understand and support those people in their lives who are facing a life without children. In this episode, we were lucky enough to be joined by Jessica Hepburn, author, arts producer and adventure activist. Jessica has written The Pursuit of Motherhood and The Brilliant 21 Miles, covering her quest to swim the English Channel, but also a quest to uncover women's experiences of motherhood and non-motherhood. She was also executive director at the Lyric Theatre until 2015 and was also a co-founder of Fertility Fest, which included a day on childlessness, funnily enough. In fact, if it hadn't been for Fertility Fest, Michael, Berenice and myself may never have met, and you wouldn't have had this podcast. We spoke to Jessica about her latest adventure, which saw her complete the dream of climbing Mount Everest over a 7-year period. A quest that saw her face into many challenges, not least those of returning safely to base camp after a freak accident, and the existential legacy she's now leaning into. This episode, I can promise you, will stay with you for a long time. It did for us.
No pressure.
Oh, God,
We all go like, oh my God. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you, Berenice? You look really well.
How do you? I love your dress.
Oh, well, it's a top actually, but you know,
that's very nice.
I haven't got my pajama bottoms on, I promise.
I'm doing yoga pants, but it's fine. With paint on, actually, because I've been already painting this morning, trying to get stuff done for World Childless Week, because I promised Steph is holding me accountable to doing some kind of art thing.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, which is done. Bindy's seen it, Nina's seen it in the meditation group. It's done. And I finished it off yesterday, but I realised that this morning in doing something else and picking it up, it's still wet. So I now have paint on my clothes.
I feel for you. I am the sort of person who gets covered in paint. Is that bagpuss on your shelf?
Yes, it's giant bagpuss. My mum knitted it. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And hang on, where's the no? And she knitted the clanger as well.
Oh wow! I thought I didn't realise that was a knockoff. I thought that was legitimate.
No, my mum knitted it. My mum knitted it, and the bagpuss was after our cat was put to sleep, and which sounds horribly sad, but there's a funny story to this: is that she knitted it in a week. That bagpuss. For Christmas. It was just before Christmas, some time ago now, and my dad was apparently trying to wrap this thing, and he sort of stuffed it into a bin liner. We had nothing else to put it in. There's my poor dad late on Christmas Eve as my mum stitching the last bit up and like shoving it in this bag. And so what I got on Christmas Day was this bin bag. Anyway, she knitted that for me, and so I had another cat, which is just the loveliest thing.
That is the loveliest. Yeah,
she's a brilliant mum. She's fantastic, and she's an absolute super knitter. And I am absolutely terrible. I can't even make a dishcloth. She tried when I was young. Knit some dishcloths, and they went into the thing to wash up, and she just came out as a piece of string.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not good in that arena either. But I have been trying to do some art recently, which first starts in school. So I get I do feel the sort of, therapeutic value of it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. It's been really, really good. A really good distraction. But the trouble is that I'm just getting so behind. Like last night, we didn't even have any dinner until really late because there I was doing stuff, and my husband's like, "Well, do you want to eat?" I'm like, "Yeah, I suppose." And so tortured kind of souls. It's good for diet.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say, now that is something I never forget to do, eat.
I don't normally. It's lovely to have you with us as well.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's been
best.
yeah. We're all very excited about this as well. Very excited, yeah.
Very.
And Sarah, you're just back from holiday.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure whether to mention that on the podcast, but yeah, I nearly died.
Did you?
Yeah, it was we were driving along, it'd been very dry. We were reliably informed by the police afterwards that actually we weren't the first accident that day, but we were driving along and then all of a sudden the car left the road and we sort of barrel rolled down an incline and landed on the roof in a field. So yeah, pretty terrifying actually.
So what happened? What happened?
It was do you know what, the police weren't that concerned. They said it could just be that it's been so dry and it was just laying on the surface. Could have been mud from a tractor or it could have been oil from a tractor. But we'd had a little bit of a squeaky moment like a couple of minutes before the back end of the car just sort of went, and I looked at my husband and went, oh, might want to slow down a bit, or so he did, and then we just hit this corner and just off. So yeah, fun times.
Terrifying. Did you have to go to hospital or anything?
No, we literally got out with just I've literally got a scrape on my arm and I've got quite a lot of bruising from the seatbelt. But that was it. Yeah, obviously the mental stuff. You think, oh shit, yeah. Whoa. But yeah, no, other than that, and the car was an '09, so it's quite old, but it didn't collapse or anything. I mean, we were really impressed. So yeah, but I've been driving around in a 2021 Peugeot 208 that I've fallen in love with because it's like it just goes. It's like, oh, get very excited. And Jim's going, you slow down. But no, but I've got to give it back.
Your car was a write-up. Your car was a write-up, presumably.
Yeah, curtains. It was quite old anyway, but you can, from the photos we've got, you can see the back axle had gone. So it's obviously where it barrel rolled, the tires on that side were sort of pointing sort of like that basically. So yeah, fun times. And Jim's sort of like, should we go home? And I went, no, I don't want my holiday ending like this. Let's carry on. So we've been mountain climbing and all sorts because it's just like, we're alive.
Brilliant.
Yeah, nothing like Everest, obviously, but
no, any mountain is to be respected. All mountains and all cars and roads, obviously, as well.
Yeah, completely. But no, it was good afterwards. But yes, this isn't about me.
We saw the photographs, we've seen the pictures, Michael and I have to say it was a very sobering to see them, and I'm just really, really glad that you are here, Sarah, and you're with us, and Jim is okay too. You're way, way too precious, and that is a frightening thing. So I mean, from my point of view, just getting back in the car and driving in the car that you don't want to hand back, I think it's actually an amazing thing because it can really just throw people. So yeah. And I'm glad that you carried on your journey. Your photograph will doubtless be impressive. More impressive than that one.
Yeah. It's a tale of two halves.
I think that's probably quite true, isn't it? So it's lovely to have you here because that was really scary to see. Really
but I have to say I'm very excited to have you back on, Jessica. We met, didn't we, a while ago?
I've not been on your podcast before. This is my first time. Yeah,
I know. That's
the back on in terms of this is the second, because last time, Sarah, I was interviewing you for the fertility show.
Right. So
we all know each other in that kind of way because really, actually, I was thinking how we kind of owe you a massive thank you for actually introducing us, because I met Michael at the fertility fest at Shepherd's Bush, the last one that you did there. And I met Sarah at the Fertility Fest in person, the one afterwards at the Barbican.
Yeah.
Leslie and I were outside, and we were had several kind of impromptu book signings that we had to organise. Leslie Pine and I. That was a hilarious day. It was so much fun. Absolutely exhausted. I think, Sarah, you and I went for something to eat afterwards, didn't we? With Steph, World Childbirth Week, and I think I was in the point where I was going to stick my head in the food and kind of go to sleep. God knows what you must have felt like, Jessica, because you had another day to go.
That means a lot to me. That's really nice to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't for you, there's lots of people we have to thank, but actually you're a critical part of the journey, because I think Fertility Fest, certainly all of those events brought people together from different areas, and it was such a variety of people from doing different things. They were incredible events, very, very powerful, and just lovely to meet people. I mean, Michael, you flew kind of halfway across the world to go there. I know you were other things, but it's just
well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Vicky did say to me, she goes, "What the hell are we going to this for?" Because when I said, "Oh, we're going to go to Fertility Fest," and she went, "What? What for?" And then it wasn't until, we said, "Well, no, there's a day for us as well." All right, okay. She was quite nervous. But before we go off on a tangent, because we have a global audience, let's find out who Jessica is. And so, who are you and what do you do?
Oh, God, who am I? Oh, many things. Well, I describe myself now, but I mean, I'm always in dialogue with how to describe myself, but I'm currently describing myself as an author, arts producer, and adventure activist. And to start with the arts producing element, which is relevant because we've just been talking about Fertility Fest, which was an arts festival about all aspects of making and not making babies. That was a festival that I established a few years ago after a decade. Actually, most of my career has been spent in the theatre. I ran a theatre in London called the Lyric Hammersmith for many years. And when I left that, well, when I was there, actually, I can sort of segue into another part of who I am and my sort of life story. That's a good point. While I was running the theatre in my 30s, I was also on this desperate mission to become a mother, going through round after round of unsuccessful IVF, ultimately 11 rounds of unsuccessful IVF. And during that time, I wrote my first book. Actually, this is all segueing beautifully, and I didn't even plan it in advance because that's the author aspect of my job title. I wrote my first book. I hadn't been a writer. I always say that all I ever did was write like reports for work. But I knew at the time, I mean, this is like years ago now, right? My first book came out in 2014. So, not long, it will be like 10 years ago. And obviously I started writing it before that, but I just felt at the time that, whilst there were other stories about, my first book is called The Pursuit of Motherhood. Whilst there are other stories about, trying to conceive, there really wasn't a lot at that point about an unsuccessful journey. I mean, like certainly at the time when I was writing it, I didn't actually, I thought by the end of the book I was going to have the perfect happy ending, when in actual fact I didn't. But I felt it was an important story with like loads of emotional highs and lows, and it was a subject that needed to be taught and written about more. And, I do think the landscape has totally transformed now. And hopefully I played a really small part of that in that. But my book came out in 2014. In 2015, I left the Lyric and I set up this festival, which we were just discussing, where you all met in various ways, and that means so much, which is called Fertility Fest. And it was about bringing all sorts of different artists, theatre makers, choreographers, writers, visual artists, musicians, composers together, to talk about all the sort of many subjects of making or not making babies in the 21st century. And it culminated, it grew exponentially. And so that in 3 years, by 2019, we'd taken over the Barbican, which is like one of the biggest art centres in the UK. And I was a bit sort of like confounded by this. I never imagined it would have such traction, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to set up an international arts festival forevermore. And then of course COVID hit and we had a bit of a hiatus. I've actually made the decision now that it was a 3-year thing, and it was beautiful and perfectly formed, and like I sort of want to hand the baton on to other people now. So that's a lot of who I am. That feels quite a lengthy introduction already, but I just have like another important thing to add to it, which is the adventure activism. So that's the final part, which is that after my 11th round of unsuccessful IVF, I just decided I needed to do something different in my life. Like I had lost what felt like a decade of my life to this thing that I call Project Baby. And I was 43, and I've had a best friend from university who'd said to me in my 30s, Jessica, it's all about the number 43. If you haven't had a baby by the time you get to 43, you can go and do like something else amazing. And like when she said that, I was absolutely sure that I would have had a baby by the time I was 43. I mean, like that wasn't a question. Like it was a nice like anecdote, but it wasn't happening to me. And there I was at 43, and I hadn't had this baby that I longed for. And so I decided I was going to do something like completely different. And that thing was what I describe now as my sort of part childhood dream, part midlife crisis, which is that I decided I was going to swim the English Channel. And I knew nothing, like I'd enjoy part childhood dream because I'd enjoyed swimming as a child, but I was not a swimmer. I am not an athlete. I'd never done open water swimming ever, like, all I really, could do was like head up breaststroke. And so I went on this like life-changing journey to swim the Channel, and that became the subject of my second book, which Sarah wrote to me really lovelily, if that's a word, and said she was reading. Thank you, Sarah. That book was called 21 Miles, which we might talk about in a bit more detail, given that Sarah's reading it, so I won't say too much more about it now. And then it sort of really started this other thing, which again we might talk about in more detail, which is like using these big endurance challenges that I've subsequently done, starting with the Channel, to try and transform my life into the life that I can have. Like the quote I live my life by is by the writer Kazuo Ishiguro, the Japanese writer, which is, there is another life I might have had, but I am having this one. And I just love that quote, because the other life I might have had was to be a mother, and I'll never get over that didn't, like, a biological mother didn't happen for me, but I'm living another amazing life. And that has involved writing books, but also which would never have happened without all this, I don't think, but also taking on these amazing challenges. So swimming the Channel, then I ran the London Marathon, and I am just back from summiting Everest, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in more detail. So I'm so sorry, that is a long introduction. That's why it's really difficult to describe what I am, but that is me in a sort of rather large nutshell.
Well, that's why we got you on the show, Jessica, because we all know this. And so we thought, we've got these two girls here are fangirling out right now, I can tell you. Because we just think you're tremendous.
Yeah,
I'm just getting Vicky to find my copy of the book our copy of the book so I can wave it too.
But we're actually there.
Sorry to interrupt, but please don't fang on me, because I am just struggling through life like everybody else. I mean, I know it all looks shiny, but I am just struggling through life like everybody else,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes over in what you said. It's that there's so many things that I'm scribbling down stuff here because of what you were talking about, and that there's moments, I think, that when you created something, Fertility Fest being one of them, but also 21 Miles, all the writing that you have done are kind of pivotal moments, I think, for lots of people. But then that's true of, I think, many of our guests on here.
Yeah.
and might debate possibly the podcast, perhaps the full stop too, but people find things and they go, okay, that's the thing that is the thing that either inspires or brings comfort or a degree of humanity to something that's quite, I think certainly when I've spoken to you and I've heard you I've listened to you several times over the past or the years that we've known each other, and it's having gone through IVF as well, it's so clinical, it's so regimented, and sometimes it's quite hard to bring to bear the personal effect of that, how the impact of it is just grueling beyond anything, because it can feel like statistics. I mean, I quote statistics about IVF, and I know that you have as well, but actually behind it there is a person, and there are, you know, other people, numerous people around the world affected by that, and their friends, their families, their colleagues, everyone. It's like a ripple effect out. And what I found was so, for me, that had so much meaning was that you were the first person that I had met who actually put some humanity into that story of something that actually previously was so clinical. And that kind of created a voice for me too, which then creates a voice for other people, because we're all kind of pulling each other along somewhere and giving some kind of life to these stories. And that matters so much. You know, Fertility Fest was huge like that. Those books are huge like that. You know, they create a platform and a little bit of kind of courage, I think, for other people to follow that too. So yeah.
Oh, bless you, Bernice. I mean, I think it's interesting because one of the things that I mean, obviously, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, because I think this is the truth of the experience. And actually this relates to something that I actually started saying, and then I started saying something else, but like, we're all very, very private and secretive about it initially, I think. And then when you come out, and I do think that is the right phrase, you suddenly realize you are not alone. And there is such sort of solidarity in that. But what I've also realized, and this is the thing that I was going to start saying before I segued back, is that, you know, what I've also realized is that everyone's story is different. And that's why we do need to hear all the stories. I think that's and that's why sort of a podcast like yours and interviewing lots of people, you know, is so important. And I try to do that with Fertility Fest as well. I wanted to hear the full facet of the story. It doesn't look just like one thing. And IVF isn't just success, but IVF isn't just failure either. You know, it's really important that both those things are recognized. But I think within these stories, there are always some sort of anchors of truth. Anchors of shared experience that everybody goes through. And, you know, I think that, I mean, I'm not saying everybody, but like, you know, the secretive thing, the shame thing, the privacy thing is a very, very common experience that that people can connect with when you're brave enough to say, you know, like, this is me, you know, me too.
Yeah. I think that, excuse me, I think that comes across in 21 Miles, doesn't it? The fact that you've gone, I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly of motherhood. Yeah. And I think, you know, you read it and you don't want to see all the shiny stuff, that you go, well, this is my story and this is the happy ending. And I think that's what I love about this book, is the fact that you spoke to lots of different women with lots of different lifestyles, viewpoints around children, some of them not shiny. And I think that is a really good thing. You don't hear that voice. Do you go, well, actually, I'm a mum, but actually I'm not that maternal. And I think that a lot of what you're talking about there shines through in the 21 Miles. It's not just a story about swimming the channel. It's also this other side of, well, look, this very personal story sitting behind it. And actually I needed to find out that everything wasn't shiny with that other life I could have lived.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you've really sort of described the premise of the book, Sarah, there, which is that, you know, I was coming out of 11 rounds of IVF, decided I needed to do something different, decided that I was going to go on this crazy journey to swim the channel, which like is crazy and amazing. And just there's just this little sort of interesting thing, which is that I had no idea about, which is that in order to be classified as an official channel swimmer, you can't wear a wetsuit if you want to swim the channel, because Captain Matthew Webb, who first swam the channel in 1875, didn't wear a wetsuit. So you can only wear a costume and a hat and goggles. And, that is the challenge of the channel, because it's cold in there. And so the only way that you can sort of stave off the cold is to have a little bit of human padding. Mm-hmm. So that's what sort of generated this idea. This challenge I've taken on, which is nuts, but it is also a license to eat, which is my joy, my unadulterated joy in life. And so I'm going to, so what if I met and ate with 21 famous women to try and get fat, to swim the channel, and ask them the question, does motherhood make you happy? And so the story is as much about, exactly as you say, the journey to swim the channel and everything that gave me, but also this journey to find and meet these 21 women. And I really wanted a whole gamut of experience, and I got it. And you're absolutely right. There is a conclusion to the book as to the question, which is, does motherhood make you happy? Which, I always say to people, read the book and see it. And it's sort of, it's handled lightly and hopefully wittily. So it's not a big, I have found the answer. It isn't like that at all. But so I won't say what that is. I'd rather people read it and hopefully enjoy the reading experience. But what I will say is that I learned from all these women that everyone has their hard stuff in life. Everyone has their pain. And mine is that I couldn't have my own biological baby with the man that I loved. And that is my profound pain that I will be living with for the rest of my life. I am never getting over it, ever. Even with all these other things that I've done, and I love my life. Right now, I absolutely love my life, but doesn't mean to say that I do not have a massive pain in my heart. But everyone does. Everyone has something, and it looks different. Sometimes you've lost someone you've loved too early, or sometimes you feel like you haven't achieved your potential in life, or, it looks like all sorts of different things. But I really profoundly believe in that sort of tenet, which is life is a struggle for everyone. And it's how do you struggle well? And I think that I can say, I have learned to struggle well. And that is the thing that I have this phrase, live big and brave, which I'm sort of, trying to sort of promote. And that is the thing that I'm sort of, if I have a sort of mission right now in the world, it's struggle well. You can, it's possible. Doesn't mean the pain's going anywhere.
Wow. That's a message for our times, isn't it? You just stunned three of us into silence.
I know.
Well done. That doesn't happen very often, if ever.
It was either silence. I thought either the technology's not working, or I am so boring right now that they fall asleep.
True, isn't it though? I was writing actually something for Steph for World Travel Week, of which you, Michael, and I are ambassadors of, and there's a degree of that accountability that I promised her I would do this thing. And I was writing how it's like a bag of grief. I always say the bag of grief. It's just the best way I can kind of picture it, and it's a visualization that it's a bag of grief that I carry, and sometimes it will weigh heavy on some days, and other days that I have to reach for help, and other days it's light, but it's always there. I know it's there. It doesn't mean to say that, there's I was under the illusion, going back to your conversation about being 43, and that's the magic number. And mine was someone telling me that, well, at the end of it all, you can get a dog. Can work out, get a dog. And of course, I thought, put pressure on this dog. And of course, I have a dog. I have a very lovely rescue who rescued me, Lady Molly Lickalot. I love her to bits. But actually, I was in that kind of thing where I thought, oh, well, that's fine now. I'm going to be all right. And of course, epically kind of crashed in quite a big way, as way back in on the very first podcast I talk about it. But it was just not necessarily, you get to a point where perhaps somebody has unconsciously given you a milestone that you perhaps never kind of realized was that big a kind of thing, that actually then you get to that point and think, oh, okay, I've got to the end, I have no child, the IVF stopped, dog, or whatever else it is that you think you need to do. But actually, it's learning to, as you say, it's learning to struggle well. It's knowing that whatever the things you do next, it doesn't necessarily kind of fill that gap. That gap is always going to be there. It's learning to live with it and learning to live with it in a way that, you can kind of, I don't know, manage is an awful word, isn't it? It's too businessy, but yeah, articulated that so well.
But so have you, and actually I think like the dog is a beautiful thing too, because it, like, I do think like pets and the animals in our lives are really healing and important in the same way that like nature has been for me, like that's like the sea and mountains in particular, have like been really, really important. So even though they don't eclipse the pain, they are finding your thing is important. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it might be that people don't find it for a while. It might be years.
Find different things, or they find different things, because I just as I was saying the sea and the mountains, I thought, like, how could I not just say writing? Because actually writing, like, it has been weirdly, oh God, this is going to get deep now, and I do worry that I can't always be entirely clear about my philosophy when I'm still working it out, but like in some respects, doing extreme challenges like swimming the Channel and climbing mountains, climbing Everest, as an unlikely athlete, as not someone who relishes these challenges, they have been my version of cutting myself, like I do think, I mean, I've never been in a situation where I have traditionally self-harmed, but I from my understanding of it, self-harm is, I think comes out of a sort of wanting to feel the pain and feeling better from the pain. So in some respects, those huge extreme challenges, as someone who finds that very, very difficult, has been my version of that. And writing, actually, which has been my total bliss and joy, has been has been the thing that I've loved. But for me, so just sort of in answer to what you said, like it could take a while to find something, or it could be more than one thing, and they can look different. The things that you find don't always, it's not just about finding joy always. Sometimes something that doesn't bring you initial joy can, or immediate joy, like, can also be really important in the process of life, I think.
Completely. Yeah, I mean, I'm really struck by this struggle well. Is that the driving force then? Because you've gone from swimming, and then you've gone, right, I'm going to climb mountains, and they feel very, very different. Like the self-harm analogy, obviously I know a little bit about self-harm because of what I do as a counsellor, but it seems to me that they are so different in terms of one's swimming, obviously, but one's climbing. Yeah. It's not like you've channeled and gone, oh, I'm going to devote myself completely to swimming, even though it was something in my childhood.
Yeah.
So is it that you have to struggle well all the time?
Well, they are very different as physical challenges. But there are some similarities. I mean, you've asked a question in true good therapist style there, Sarah, that makes me question my own motivation. Yeah. And obviously I'm still sort of working it out. But I think there are, but I do, I mean, that's one thing when you don't have children, which I sort of feel, I do sometimes feel very sad about, which is that you have a lot of time to think about yourself, right? I think that's one of the things that is it is sad for me, which is, I mean, obviously that's my choice, that I've focused on like living my own best life rather than looking at other ways of becoming, a parent or caring responsibilities, although I do look after my 90-year-old mother, so I do have some caring responsibilities, but yeah, I think there are some similarities in them, in that I've taken on big endurance challenges. So they're both big. They look very different as sports and technical challenges, but they are both big. The two iconic endurance challenges really on the planet. But the other really important thing for me, which has been a massive process of learning and coming to terms for me, is that they are challenges in nature. And as you, I don't know where you've got to in 21 Miles, Sarah, but there's a really critical moment in the story where I attempt to channel relay before I attempt to solo, which doesn't work out because the sea gets really rough and we get taken out of the water. And that is the first point when I realize that swimming the channel is just like IVF. Like the outcome, doesn't matter how hard I try, but the outcome is out of my control. And because something bigger than me is in charge, nature. And in the case of the channel, the sea, but Everest is exactly the same. Something bigger than you decides whether you will climb the mountain. And that is her, Everest, or as I call her by her Tibetan name, Chomolungma. And so I think, and that has been really, so yes, they are very different, but there are parallels. And this conversation that I have been having with nature has become a really important theme in my life, which is accepting that there is, and I suppose it's a sort of my version of faith or spirituality, like, because I'm not conventionally religious. I don't have a conventional religion, but I definitely sort of believe in something. Believe in. When I was saying I believe in something is wrong again, but I sort of, I believe in nature. I believe in my significance in the cosmos, and that something, it's not God's plan or anything like that. It's about like understanding that there is something bigger than me in charge, something more important than all of us as individuals, and that has been really important for me. And these two challenges have really helped me with that.
Wow. I'm sorry, I'm blown away by how deep these answers are. I'm curious though.
Sorry, no. Sarah, I like one thing I ought to have told you maybe in advance is that all my close friends says Jessica doesn't do small talk. She only does.
I love that though. I love that. I mean, it's kind of, we've had, obviously we had Rob on. I've lost track of the time frame, but we had Rob on, who is very, he's very much the same, but his thing is kind of in swimming. But his ethos is very different to yours. So yours is, I am very with the spiritual. This thing is bigger than me. I don't have control. The disappointments along the way, and it's kind of those parallels. But I was wondering, are you okay to talk about the Everest? Because I know that has been a huge, huge, multifaceted challenge as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Well, first of all, it took me 6 years and I was never expecting, when I had this dream that I wanted to complete this thing, which is called the Pond to Peak Challenge, which is swimming the English Channel and climbing Mount Everest, which only a handful of people in history have done. And that was partly sort of driven by the fact that like the channel experience had been so amazing, but also I had the double loss of the that I went through all this 11 rounds of IVF, and I really feel that swimming the channel was a really important part of the process of sort of coming to, I'm going to use the word coming to terms, for want of a better word. And then my relationship with my partner of 16 years broke down. And so I had like a loss upon loss. So the journey to Everest was very much about then coming to terms with that. But like, I had no idea it was going to take as long as it did. I mean, I was originally supposed to go to the mountain in 2020, 2 weeks before I was due to leave. It was shut down due to COVID. I did go in 2021, but it was one of the worst seasons ever on the mountain. And our expedition was shut down because our Sherpa team got COVID. But also there was terrible weather, that we had a lot of cyclone issues, and also I got a really bad chest infection. But I learned from that I learned a lot about what it is to climb that mountain. I mean, and I had climbed the mountain in the sense that I had been on her. And I think it's really important to say that, like, I don't think mountains have to always be about summiting, you know, but I sort of knew after 2021 that I did have another attempt in me. And I wanted to try again. I felt like I hadn't reached the destination. The journey hadn't reached its conclusion, whatever that looked like. And I'm not saying for a moment that the destination had to be the top of the world. Because in actual fact, I did get to the top of the world this year in 2022, and it didn't look how I thought it was going to look. Well, you know, I'm not saying the view from the top, but as you've referred to, it was sort of 8 days which were the most terrifying and difficult of my life, you know. It wasn't what I imagined was going to happen. But that's why I think this sort of thing about struggling well is so important, because you know, it was a struggle, even though it was successful. And so, to be honest, I'm still processing exactly what happened. I'm currently writing my third book, very excitingly, which I'm sort of seeing as the third in a trilogy, the final sort of book even though they can all be read independently, absolutely. I think it's the final one I'll certainly write for quite a while, as me as the central narrator. And I've been working on the book for 6 years. And I've actually just literally in the last couple of days completed the first draft. And I left the summit bid to the very end, because it was the hardest thing to write. So I am feeling like I'm really processing it. And I feel like I can't say too much about it at this stage, but what I will say is that when I got down from the mountain, like, I told a few people I'd summited. A lot of people didn't even know that I'd gone back to Nepal. I put what I describe as the obligatory post on social media, but I mean, I sort of did that in a blur. I mean, I then sort of basically shut down and didn't look at social media again for weeks. I then didn't speak, when I was still in Nepal, I didn't speak to anybody. And when I got home, I hardly left my house. I was in shell shock. And the reason for this is that the summit bid had been so hard. And I've now got to the point where I sort of describe it in 3 stages. So there was going up to the top, which was really, like, just getting to the top was not straightforward, first of all. That's all I'll say on that. Then going down, I was involved in a freak accident. And that is the bit that I have now, if anyone's listening to this, I have now written a sort of essentially a blog post, which you can read, where I've said a bit more about the story. And I have disclosed that I broke my leg on the way down. I mean, obviously I did not know that I had broken my leg at the time, but I got hit in the death zone, which is 8,000 meters, so above Camp 4, by an oxygen bottle, in a freak accident, and it fractured my fibula. And there is no rescue at that height on the mountain. I then subsequently, and I haven't written about this, but I will say it, got altitude or snow blindness. and at Camp 4, which again is at 8,000 meters. I mean, and I like, well, you talked earlier, Sarah, about your car crash, and I really feel for you, because that I did look death in the face at that point, because I couldn't walk well. I couldn't hardly walk, and I'd gone blind. But it was unfortunately temporary. Fortunately temporary. Anyway, I got down, but there is a third part of the story which is the hardest, and the thing that I'm really not going to say anything about, but is what's so difficult, is that there was a lot of moral injury on the mountain, and it is partly, I'm sad to say this, but I don't think it would have happened if I wasn't a middle-aged woman and not essentially a non-mountaineer, and just, you know, trying to struggle well, you know, and turn my life into something good for me and other people. And I, you know, I can feel the emotion in my voice right now as I'm saying it. So, and what is really hard, and in a way, you know, like, actually, again, there's a similarity. I hadn't even thought about this. I mean, actually, this is the first time I've said as much as I've just said. And I hadn't even thought about this before, but actually you're going to make me need to go away and think about this, because in a way it's sort of like there are, again, parallels with the IVF journey, like the physical injury of not being able to get pregnant, but then the emotional pain of of it as well, and all that goes with that. And this was both, I had both a physical and an emotional injury up there. And that's been really hard. And for a while, and this is why, you know, like, I went into essentially hiding when I got down, and I wasn't all over the internet going, yes, I've climbed to the top of the world. And why I also said at the beginning, like, you know, like, I know it all looks really shiny, but it isn't. Like, my life is not shiny. Even when the shiny stuff happens, somehow the universe gives me stuff that is really, really, really not shiny. But like, I also sort of celebrate that in a way, you know, like, and I just sort of like, and I suppose that's what my work has become, you know, and this sort of like segues right back to the beginning, that I'm trying to live my life for me, but if I can help other people through my own story, like, then I leave the world a better place. And I'm just trying to be a better person for me and the world, you know, and in a small way, you know, and in a world where like so much is bad, you know, that's what I just encourage everyone. Just try and make, like, whatever your story in life, whatever your pain, just try and make the world a little bit better for you and other people. That's my story.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I could really hear the emotion. Thank you for just, yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you. That's very special. And I think, yeah, can hear the emotion in your voice. An awful lot to go through and to unpack, isn't it, as well, and to think about and reflect on. That's a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yet again, I'm just gobsmacked. I've got no words. It's listening to what you have to say is quite profound. Thank you.
But relatable, I think, as well. Not that we've all gone through. I don't know anyone else that's done the things that you have done, but they are relatable. It does go back, isn't it? It is the trauma, I think. I mean, Sarah, you talk an awful lot about that, and I know you've got so much more experience and wisdom on that, but it's the trauma of, I don't know, I sometimes think that people think that maybe we all have a lot more resilience than maybe we have, because you went through this and you are used to grief. And you know, actually, no. Human, like everybody else. Yeah.
Well, that is true. And I think I'd answer that with two things. I mean, firstly, I'd say, yeah, I am really, really conscious that it does look like I've done these extraordinary things, but like, I am a person of extremes. Like, I went through 11 rounds of IVF. That is the extreme end of the spectrum. So it sort of makes sense to me, and hopefully the world, that I might go and do things like swim the channel and climb Everest as a sort of antidote. So so I am that. But what I would say on the resilience thing, Berenice, is that I actually do feel quite resilient. I feel emotion and pain and struggle, but I think that the IVF and the channel and the mountains and to be honest, writing my books, because when my first book came out, like everyone was like, oh well, no one wants a story without a happy ending. You're not, unless you're a celebrity, of course. And when I was bringing my second book about, well, no one wants a story about swimming the channel and interviewing famous women about motherhood. Where do we put that on the shelf? And when my next book comes out, and I know I'll get it again, which is, well, no one wants a mountaineering adventure story with, with your they want an unlikely athlete adventure story. But my third book is about music and mountains. It's about going on a dual adventure of climbing mountains and music, listening to music. And they'll say, oh, no one wants that. And so, but I sometimes feel like all these sort of challenges that I face, whatever they look like that they just, I just sort of feel like I have this sort of, this is a podcast, so people are listening, so they can't see what I'm doing right now. But I have this rod of steel across me. And I just think, I'm just getting stronger. I'm just getting stronger and stronger and stronger every day. And so actually, if that's okay to challenge the thing about resilience, it doesn't mean that I don't have sadness and pain, but I do feel bloody strong these days. Yeah, I do.
Good. You can see it. And I think that's it, isn't it? I can remember being asked, oh God, about 6, 7 years ago, something like that, by somebody who meant well, I think, and I think I meant well. You mean well with things, to do a talk on resilience. I was just utterly unprepared for it, because I thought, what have I ever done? What have I done? And it was just at the wrong time for me to do that. But what I found is that now it's a much easier kind of word to deal with, because of just small steps. In fact, in the piece I've written, I actually quoted you in that about when I talk to design students who I mentor, and they first come in and they think, oh my God, right, okay, I've got this tiny little bit of portfolio. How do I get to be a designer? What do I do? How do I do that? And so it's a bit like, how do you climb Everest in slippers? And I occasionally kind of well, actually, this is a person I know, Jessica Hepburn, and you want to read 21 miles because actually, you start with something small. And then you start going and you're going and you build and you build and you build. And the other analogy is how to eat an elephant one bite. But I don't eat elephants or meat, so I find it's a bit inappropriate. But it is that kind of, what people, listeners might think, oh, well, how does that relate to me? How does all this relate? Often in the way that people might say, well, how does the podcast relate to them? Because you do a podcast. And it's this minor kind of like celebrity, tiny celebrity status with things. But actually, it's just a tiny step. So if someone's listening to this and thinking, oh, well, okay, well, Childless Week, obviously for some people, they've written their first thing maybe this year. They might have written something last year. They might be the first time listening to something like the podcast, might be the first time writing something for World Childless Week. By the time you hear this, the deadline would have passed, everybody. But you can get involved by being part of that audience as well. And it's just a tiny thing, and everything's relatable, and it's not necessarily making you kind of Bindi Shah calls it like a ball of light, but it is kind of creating some degree of kind of armor, I think. And that, she said, that rod of steel. And Bindi, who's been on the before, does a ball of light with surrounded by metal and crystals, and it's just quite an amazing thing, because it does actually make you sit up a bit straighter in the meditation and think, yeah. Go me.
I think that's beautiful. And actually listening to you talk there made me think about, well, what do I think? And again, this sort of takes us right back to the beginning of where we started and what I am. I'm thinking more and more of myself as sort of an alternative adventurer, and in a way, like that's how I approach life, as an adventure. And I'd sort of maybe say, in response to what you've just said, that's also a way of looking at whatever you might want to do, even if it seems ginormous. Don't look at what the destination is or what you want the destination to be right now. Just think about yourself going on an adventure and taking one step into the unknown, because that's what an adventure is. Something that is not walking to the shops that you do every day. But it looks different. I mean, this is what I say at the end of the overture, or the opening to my new book. Like, what I want to do is encourage people to go on an adventure. And sometimes that will be high and far away. It might be Everest, and sometimes it will be closer to home and in your head. And for me, that was what I was listening to do, like, which anyone can do, and find your adventure in life, because like adventures change your life for the better. And in a way, like, when I don't regret my 11 rounds of IVF, I don't regret my unrequited pursuit of motherhood. That was an adventure. It was an adventure who made me who I am today. And I like who I am today. I mean, I want to be a better person. I get up every morning and go, how can I be a better person today, for myself and other people? But like, most of the time, I know that I'm a loving person, just trying to do my best, in this short time I have on this planet, and having, some amazing experiences, because I'm prepared to like get out of my comfort zone and go on a little adventure. Yeah. Sorry, I'm starting to feel I'm being boring now. Shall we quit?
No.
Really not. What is interesting? What's really interesting about when you were coming on here, and Michael said about the introduction, and I wrote down that actually it's interesting that I didn't think of you and IVF first of all. I thought about Fertility Fest. I thought about adventuring. Even though you and I obviously share the extremes of IVF as well. I've been through more than one round as well. But I actually thought of it in so many different ways, which I think is quite incredible, really. Although we could have automatically gone straight to that point of, well, okay, IVF. But like you, I think maybe there's an element of kind of like owning that part of who we are. I don't regret it,
No,
I don't think anyone should regret their roots to wherever we are in this space, and they're all so varied. But yes, I don't regret it. It's made me into a different person, and probably actually a better person, because I have a lot more empathy than I might have had before. And it's that same story, same swimming pool, same storm, same storm, different boats is how I sort of see it, with parent friends as well, and other people in our lives, but also other people in our community too. We all end up in this space, we're all listening, because majority of our listeners don't have children. Some do and listen because they want to know more about our guests and about our stories. But actually it's a different kind of boat that we're in, all in this big storm, and life's complicated, and out there right now the world is pretty pants. It's not very nice. So.
No, it's not. And it's also a wonderful world, to use a musical analogy.
I like that one. Yes.
because it is both, that's the thing about, like, like life is wonderful, and also life is a struggle. It is, the world is wonderful and it's also terrible. It is like both these things. So, and embracing that is the key to life, I reckon.
Michael's doing that. I've seen a sneak preview, which will probably be out anyway, and it's Michael's video on celebrating us that he's created for World Childless Week. And apart from the fact that he's amazing and has an alternative career in video production, frankly, as well as podcasting and all the other things that he does that are incredible, but one of the most amazing things about just this uncut, it's just literally the draft of it, for which I'm so privileged to see, that is actually just all the people from around the world. And and where they, a little bit snippet of where they live. And actually the intro with Michael and where he lives and what you see of you're just like so cool, Michael, in your car driving around with your video on. But it's just like you see where you live and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. What a brilliant planet we live on too. And all the different places that people listen to. And there's a little map in the corner. I'm like, wow, oh my God. You listen there and you come in and you come down this. And it's incredible.
So where can you get that? Where will we be able to get that, Michael? Where will we be able to see
where is it?
It'll eventually sit on my YouTube channel, but it'll be released in World Childless Week for We Are Worthy Day.
Brilliant.
So it is. I've asked people to give words of encouragement, words of hope, thank someone in the community, but also if there's something you're proud of, tell us.
Yeah. Because
we don't normally get that opportunity. And so I think that's important to give, like you on the show now, Jessica, is people will get so much from listening to your story, like you said in the beginning. It's about our different stories. So I just wanted to catch those. And some people have been extremely generous with what they've shared.
Brilliant. Oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And I wanted to say one other thing, which in a way was what a riff off what you were saying, Berenice, earlier about, I think also when we come out, what I experience when you come out and sort of claim or celebrate your childlessness, what you also realize, well, certainly for me, what I realized is that when I was so ashamed of it and so secretive about it, it sort of felt like it was all of me, and the moment I came out to the world through my first book and said, this is my story, like suddenly it became a much smaller part of me and sort of freed me to be the multifaceted human being that I am. So yeah, when you were saying, when I think of you, I think of, your books or Fertility Fest or you being an adventurer, I think that's just amazing because that is what I want. I've never seen myself, and if I'm honest, I don't want to be a childless activist or I'm a sort of an activist to struggle well, with whatever your pain is, and this happens to be my pain, but I don't really see myself as a sort of childless person, weirdly, even though I know that I am, because it is a part of who, it's not my whole identity. And I think one of the problems is with this pain is it can feel like it becomes your whole identity. And if you want it to be your whole identity, that's fine. That is fine. But if you don't, that is fine too. And try and love it for the small part of it, who it is in you, and then love the rest as well and enjoy the rest, because it isn't everything.
That's funny because I remember when you interviewed me, the question you asked me was, I can't remember the exact wording. It's something like, would you, what was it? Something like, would you rather not have had your childlessness or something like that?
Yeah.
And we both went, no, I would rather have had it.
Yeah.
And it's the weirdest thing because you go, how bizarre. Why am I saying this? You're so right, aren't you? Because it's part of you and you wouldn't be you without that part. So I'm curious. So this struggle well, I feel like it should be like some sort of tattoo that you have done. So
I can see the mug. We can get those made too. Struggle well mugs.
You've got a water bottle there.
I'm not the first person to say it. Yeah, but anyway.
Where does struggle well? Where are you going with this next? Do you think? What is next on your world plan or whatever it is you're planning?
Well, sort of my number. When I got back from Everest, I was sitting in my bed writing my book. You know, it's been a glorious summer. I know it's been too hot, but the weather has been glorious. Window open, you know, I've got trees outside my window, like they looked like translucent because there's no green on the mountain, you know, on Everest. There's ice and snow and rock. Nothing grows that high. And I was just like rejoicing in the wonder of the world. And I'm blaring on about this because in that moment I thought, I am so happy right now. You know, I'm doing what I love. I'm writing about my adventure. I'm in my home in London, the London that I love. And so like right now, like my aim is just to enjoy this a bit, you know, because it has been a 6-year journey. And what has been brilliant in a way, I can't believe I'm saying what has been brilliant about my terrible summit bid. But like generally, when you achieve a goal, in my experience, there's often like a bit of an anticlimax afterwards, you know, and it's natural, but it's like, it's messy, it's icky, you know, like, because you think, but I've just achieved a goal. Why do I feel so terrible? But weirdly, because when I achieved my goal of climbing Everest, I had a sort of different type of terrible because I didn't feel any sense of triumph or achievement. The sort of sense of achievement has come slowly, you know. It's grown. It's just sort of like a little plant has started to grow, and so I'm sort of really enjoying that at the moment. So really, at the moment, I'm writing this third book, and then my sort of main aim is to like get it out into the world, because of course writing, I mean, I know you have lots of writers on the podcast, you know, that there are two very different parts of writing. If you want to publish, I mean, you don't have to write to publish. I mean, I'd encourage everyone to write, just write, you know, like, because it's really therapeutic. But if you are writing to publish, then there's the writing and then there's the publishing, getting the book into the world, and they're two different things. And like, I really want to try and enjoy that second process, which I haven't obviously even begun yet. And then I want to write more, like, over the next few years, and I want to go on more adventures. But my adventures, you know, like, might look like different moving forward for a while. Like, I was 50 in 2020, at the end of 2020, and I asked 50 of the closest people in my life to give me a challenge, you know, like, I am a challenge taker, and they gave me a whole gamut of things. None of them were like really big things like climb a mountain, swim a sea, write a book, you know, like, they know that I've done those, but they were things like, go and learn how to make a butter croissant from scratch, or go and see the Northern Lights, or, you know, like smaller, or learn to do a TikTok dance, which I did at Christmas, you know. So I'm sort of like, I see adventure being part of this next decade of my life, but the adventures might look, you know, different from what people know of me. And I also see writing as a really big part of what I want to do, because it is my joy. But this book that I'm writing now, I certainly see as the last, as I said earlier, in the sort of stories of me as the central narrator. I'm sort of looking at, you know, maybe something that's more self-helpy, and also maybe a novel beyond that. But like, it takes me a long time to write a book, so it won't be any time soon. I'm never going to be, you know, Mills and Boon knocking them out, you know. There's a lot of thinking and that goes into it, and writing. Anyway, there we go.
Oh, thank you. I love that message about the adventures not having to be big. I like that. I did a list. I love a list, a to-do list. And I did 40 things on my 40th birthday. And some of it was like learning Scottish Gaelic, which I'm still doing. You know, just little things that make life, I don't know, a little bit different, because the days otherwise they're sort of like, just sort of merge, don't they? Unless you have those little things that spark a bit of interest or do something different.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you are definitely my ideal reader for my third book, Sarah. Not least because you've read 21 Miles, but it opens with this is an adventure for list lovers. Because I am a list lover. I mean, like, as you'll in both my first two books, like, my love of lists comes through, but it's like massive in the third book. But
lovely.
But
we love a list.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. What is it about this? I think we need to have a bit of philosophy at some point. Actually, that's something. Yeah, but why is it that we like lists as human beings? But then there's also a bit of a backlash against lists as well, I find. You know, like there's a backlash against goals, you know, but I'm like, no, I'm celebrating the goal. I'm celebrating the list. But you're absolutely right. Your list can be small, and I'm practicing a new thing since getting back from Everest, because I used to be the person, like so many people, that had a to-do list you could never get through. But I have worked out that I can do 10 things in a day. And some of those are really, really, really small. I mean, sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 11. And some of the things on those lists are really, really small things. But they're important to me. Like, I read every day, and which, like, I sometimes struggle to read. You know, I find it much easier to sort of watch a box set or whatever. But I really want to read, so it's on my list. So yeah, I think have a list that's manageable and go on adventures that are small. You know, like what I call mini adventures. They don't have to be big, but they change your life for the better.
Love it.
Good. Everyone needs to set up a list now, I think, or have a Trello board. I'm very good.
Trello.
I don't know what a Trello board. Can you tell me what?
I know, quite good. Trello's free, and you've got little cards, and you can set up a list that says like to do, and the one that will be in progress or whatever, and you can move the list around, little cards on the list. And I use it for my business, but I actually use it to keep my clients in order, to be fair. In some way, lovely clients, love you if you're listening, you're all lovely, but I need some degree of order. But I have a Trello list of trips I want to take in another life.
It's like a wall of virtual sticky notes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you can color coordinate it, and you can put a nice, pretty picture in the background, which I always find quite satisfying as being creative. But actually, just stuff on my list of things I have to do. I won't use Excel. I only use Excel under extreme pressure if someone else has created something. Therefore, Trello is my opt out. I have a friend who has literally organises her holidays in Excel, and it's lovely, but it's terrifying because it's Excel.
Yeah, but then
I'll put it on a Trello board and I'll look.
But you should get a commission, because I have never heard of Trello, and I'm going to go and look at it now. I mean, I'm very old school, because my new school is lists on Excel. I have lots of lists on Excel, but like my really important lists, I keep in little notebooks by the side of my bed. But like, I have a drawer with all my lists. Like, I've got, lists of books I've read, lists of films I've seen, lists of countries I've visited. Like, they're all lists. My blessings book, which I write in every day, my resolutions. I mean, like, I have tons of books, and I've got a whole box of books behind me. I mean, they're so important. Like, they're my most precious possessions. That, like, if I was running from the burning building, I mean, I think I wrote this in my first book, I would take them with me. They are my life, but Trello, did you say? Is it Trello?
Trello,
with it?
Yeah, Trello, yeah.
You've done a bad thing to this girl.
Well, there you are. I think it's a legacy, don't you think, though, these lists? I mean, I don't have piles of lists, but I've got piles of stuff I've drawn in. I've got art books everywhere, sketchbooks all over the place, half finished, and some with writing in and some without. And I've started to pick them up again. And I find that for me, it's kind of like a leaving something. I suppose the podcast is to a point as well, that years after gone, this will be somewhere lurking around in probably Facebook will be kind of like dumped by then. It's a bit like kind of, what is it, like My Friends Reunited, to be like that. Anyway, we have a better life without Facebook, but there'll be an archive, something. And I guess that's also probably true as well of your writing. It's also leaving something that other people can take forward and for the next generations. Ironically, that's the weird thing I think that we've talked about here, is that, and that's the way I make it relatable sometimes to people who have children of their own, is, well, this will impact other generations, future generations. This is why all the people that we have on the podcast, why we are important, why World Childless Week is important, and all the other stuff that goes on, because actually it's not now, it's for the future, because it's going to happen to more people. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I really agree with that. And, sometimes it's been hard, like when you're making work in a genre or in an arena that is still quite marginalized, which, childlessness, fertility has been, sometimes you think like, no one's interested, like the very first fertility fest, like, I think 3 men and a dog came, or 3 women and a dog, I should say. But that you're doing something not just for now, but for the future, like for people in, the future that might be interested, will be interested, because we're living, and Jodie Day, who is the champion of childlessness, would, I'm sure, say this, we're living through a social change in terms of the increasing number, for all sorts of reasons, of childless people. So that is going to be really, really interesting for future generations.
Absolutely. I remember speaking to her at the Fertility Fest, and we were talking about how at the time it was the 50 ways not to be a mother, with apologies to Paul Simon, of course, that one. And we said 80, and I think lately hundreds and hundreds of reasons. And actually quite interesting, there is that kind of crossover, I think, with the child-free narrative as well. There's very similar, difficult, less grief-stricken, but I think there's a sense of grief there too. People making very painful decisions about not having children because of the state of the planet. And there might be decisions they can control and make, but it doesn't mean to say that they're necessarily happy ones either. They are. We'd all like to have that freedom to choose. So it goes back to segues back to where you were about, what you can control and what you can't control.
Yeah, I think
as well. And there are lots of stuff going on in the world that we can't control and make painful choices.
Yeah, I think that's brilliantly put, Berenice, because I think you're right. I think there's loads of people who are not having children for ecological reasons that I probably ideally would, in a different world, would have wanted their own children. So yeah, there is sadness there, and sadness for the planet, obviously. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think had I been, this is probably disingenuous to our audience to say so I don't mean to cause any offence, but I think now, if I was going through, hard to imagine going through IVF now, but if I was, I don't think I would. This is the thing, this is the kind of dawning realisation that I've got, is that actually right now, I don't know that I would. And I kind of look at people who are having children and think, my God, you're brave. Because I actually don't think that I could do that right now, not because of any other reason than just kind of, there's hope out there for our world, and there is people doing amazing things. There's incredible amounts of activism, I think, as well, but it is a big problem. It's a very big problem. It's a tough one. So I kind of, mixed bittersweet feelings, I think, about that.
And all the people I know, who are trying to get, like my peers, like my school friends, who've got teenage kids. Who would want to have yes, I would want to have a teenage kid with all the problems. Yeah, of course, I still choose that.
Yeah.
But it's so different from, I would say, when I was that age, like the things that young people have to deal with today. I think it's so challenging.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really, I do a lot of interviews actually in lots of different spheres, because obviously swimming ones, now mountaineering ones, and actually it's really special talking to people who understand you. And I really felt that this morning. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's just a joy. We always do. I think we found that with Annie as well. I think the podcast that's out at the moment, before this one goes out, again, it's actually probably even Rob as well, because Rob talked about adventuring, and actually you end up with a different a different type of conversation because of the shared space that we are in. And that's very special to us as well. It's always an inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you for your time. Really appreciated it. Thanks for listening. We hope you found Jessica as compelling as we did. We'd love to hear from you if you were equally blown away by her stories and by this episode. If you want to find out more about Jessica, you can find her at www.jessicahepburn.com. If you'd like to find out more about our podcast, or you have a great idea for a topic we've not covered, or you want more of, we'd love to hear from you. We want this podcast to have as many voices from across our community as possible, so if something's missing, or you just want a deeper dive on it, just let us know. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn, and we also have a YouTube channel now too, along with our website at www.thefullstoppod.com. You can sign up to our listeners list at the website, which keeps you up to date on what we're up to, and if you'd like to, you can also donate to our work too. However, before I finish, as always, it's important to remind you, you're not alone.
Well, you've been extremely generous. Thank you.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Right, are you done with me now? Shall I say
Done with you? Yeah. The three of us. Did Michael, Sarah, do you want to stay on, or do we not need to stay on? I don't know. You got cats to go and tend to, Sarah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen them for a couple of weeks.
I've been the same with the dog.
Did you only get in this morning?
Who?
Did
Me?
you only get in this morning?
No, we got in yesterday, but the cats were in Butlins until today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can imagine their joy at having gone to Butlins. They're like, oh shit, here again? Really? You bastards. And then they don't want to come home.
Done. Fickle things.